One. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday. My name is Justin. I'm joined by our effervescent host, Cliff Broadway, and a very special guest from way across the other side of the world, John D. Ruddy, a YouTuber and historian, and all around just nice guy. This is, I believe, this is your second time on the show.
Well, technically it's my third because there was one time where I called you up as you were driving across North America back in 2012 or something.
But that's right. That's right. We were the first people to attempt a drive across the United States of America with a 24 hours a day continuous, and I mean continuous, live stream going all the way across the country as we drove to Dragon Con in Atlanta, and you came to join us on that crazy little escapade.
It was calling up with my conspiracy theories about Azog and Bolg.
Yeah, and then we saw you in LA.
What they're gonna do.
You came to LA, I believe, and we've had you in person. But today you're calling in from Scotland, Ireland, UK,
Ireland. Yes,
Ireland. Whereabouts?
County Donegal, up in the northwest. It's funny, it's the northwest of Ireland and Ireland's most northerly county, but it's not Northern Ireland, if that makes sense. Northern Ireland's the part that's still part of the UK. Slightly touchy subject.
It's just a political boundary, though.
Exactly. Donegal is that like the wizard in Harry Potter?
That's Dumbledore. Oh, that's McGonagall. It's like
No, I actually the name sounds familiar because I believe they filmed Star Wars: The Last Jedi near there.
They did indeed. They shot part of it, of course. So any of where Luke Skywalker was in The Last Jedi in Acto, that was filmed all across the Irish coast. And part of it was shot up in Malin Head, Ireland's most northerly point. And I ended up playing the rap party for that, which was a lot of fun.
Really?
Ireland had a long
that's great.
Myself and my friend Niall, Niall now lives in New Zealand. I'm super jealous. He was at he visited Hobbiton the day before the 22nd the 21st of September, and I was super jealous of him. But hi Niall, if you're watching in New Zealand, but we played in a two-piece called Tasty, and we were asked to play the rap party for Star Wars when they were in Donegal. And Daisy Ridley was there, Ryan Johnson was there, and we played the whole night. We played for about 4.5 hours. And
Edwin in the chat room says good motorbiking roads up in there.
I know. Yes, that's very true. That's very true. There's an entire route along the west coast called the Wild Atlantic Way, and it goes 2,400 kilometers, or what is that, 1,500 miles?
Oh my goodness!
I've driven almost the whole thing. It's amazing. You can do it in about 10 days, 2 weeks.
I
highly recommend it.
Let me bring up on the show. If you're not familiar with John D. Ruddy,
actually, that's exactly what I was going to do, Justin. Since I'm the host, allow me to do that. For those people out there in YouTube land who live like I do, absolutely live on a steady diet of general information and historical and like wartime recreation educational videos on YouTube. If you're a fan of biographics, geographics, alternate history hub, and of course general knowledge, you definitely want to dial in to John D. Ruddy, who has this great library of wonderful narrated and animated YouTube videos that provide wonderful insight into battles and campaigns of the past, historical episodes, and the changing and migrations of peoples and nations. And if you're that kind of person like me, who just constantly watches TED Ed and PBS It's Okay to Be Smart videos, then John D. Ruddy is exactly the man you need to dial up on YouTube. Thank you, Justin, for letting me do that.
And so you animate everything yourself, correct?
I do. It's a lot of work.
Yes, it's a hell of a lot of work. Yeah.
Write it, edit
You can't
it,
always
illustrate
plan
it,
when you'll need a
voice
gun.
it, put the
Rational
whole
gun
thing
owners
together
carry
myself. I really, at this stage of the game, I've been doing this now. I've been making these videos since 20. Funnily enough, the first Manny Man video so the series is called Manny Man Does History, and I started doing those in 2013. But there was a precursor to that, linking it back into where we're at, where we are now in OneRing.net, was back in 2012. There was two special events that were coinciding. One of the special events was that Donegal was in the All-Ireland final of the Gaelic football championship. And so that was a big thing. And we ultimately won, which was amazing. But it was also coinciding with the 75th anniversary of The Hobbit. And so I created this, it was The Hobbit in Manny Man form, but also the story of the Donegal team playing its way through the championships. It was very random. And I did the whole thing in a bit of a Gandalf voice, which was quite interesting and entertaining.
So most of your YouTube channel is at real history and of Europe, America, Ireland, UK, world history. Have you ever done explored fictional history?
Funny you should mention that. I have some in the works now. When those works will come out, that is another thing. So fictional history has always been a massive love of mine. In fact, I was into fictional history long before I was into real history, and I think it helped lay the foundations of my love of real history. So my three favorite fictional histories: Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Metal Gear Solid, which has which actually laid down a lot of my kind of world modern world history kind of parallel between that and Forrest Gump. But so they were very influential on me when I was much younger. And then once I kind of hit adulthood and I started exploring, because I trained as a teacher, and so once I actually teaching history, I was like, this is amazing, and shame on my teachers for making this boring, because and more people need to discover history in this really fun and interesting way. So
if I can,
go ahead, Justin.
I was just gonna say that if I'm telling you, as someone who doesn't read that much and consumes everything from YouTube, I think I would appreciate a history of Second Age Middle Earth before the Amazon series comes out, so I can kind of get up to speed on what the show is going to be about. Hey, who is this?
Yes,
well, we have a happy hobbit in our midst.
There is.
What is this? Like she's putting on the ring and she's disappearing and then reappearing.
I think John.
Realize we're talking about her.
Yeah.
There's a natural appeal for your line of work, which is to crystallize this historical information about a major thing that happened in human history, whether it involved a great conflict between nations, or whether it involved the evolution of an entire region that became a powerful empire. All these fascinating things are probably right in alignment with the way that Tolkien was writing his material in such a historical way, which is why some people pick up the Silmarillion after they've read The Lord of the Rings and they stop and they go, oh, wait, it's not like that. I mean, this book doesn't read like a novel. It reads like a dusty old history,
It is quite a tome. And, it's ironic because it's not even half as long as The Lord of the Rings, but it can sometimes feel much longer. It covers a much longer period of history.
Indeed.
Like I remember I read the Silmarillion first when it was just after I did what a lot of people did. I read it right after I read Lord of the Rings, and I was about 15 or 16. And the bits that were really cool, like, Fingolfin fighting Morgoth, or Gothmog the Balrog fighting, which one? It was one of the Sons of Fëanor. There's too many of them, and they all begin with F. But, or the entire story of Beren and Luthien, all of these different epic tales. But amidst those, there's like an entire chapter describing Beleriand, like an entire chapter just describing a landscape.
Yeah.
Like, some people can sometimes, complain whenever Tolkien takes 2 pages to describe a landscape in Lord of the Rings. He takes a whole chapter.
You know what? I've seen Tolkien take 2 pages to describe one tree. In fact, I've seen him take an entire book to describe one tree, and we know which book I'm talking about. Yes, that's right. Leaf by Niggle. That is correct. Now here is, hello, Kelly. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Hello, my dear. How are you?
Our in-house Irish expert has joined the fray.
There is, John, as Justin just said, it would be really interesting to see you take on some exploratory material in making a video about Second Age history. But there are lots and lots of content providers on YouTube, including Men of the West and Lore of Middle-earth, who just recently had to change their name and their branding because of a complication with the Tolkien estate, believe it or not. Yeah,
but yes. I need Manny Man and a cartoon. I need a cartoon telling me the history.
Yeah. Well, they. But I wanted to know, John, leading to this question is, where would you choose a focus or a focal point to make maybe I shouldn't spoil the surprise before you actually get to work on the video you're going to make. But
well, I mean, I suppose this is always the kind of the dilemma that I go in sometimes, where it's like, what is the one that will be the most relevant for the most amount of people to watch? This is the joys of the life of a YouTuber. It's like, do I make the video that I want to make, or do I make the video that will get the most views? And it's about kind of striking a balance. So I mean, technically, the one that would probably be the most apt to start straight off with is a video about the Second Age, for example. And exploring, Numenor and all of that lore, and Sauron and the Fall, and Calabeth and all of that. But of course, the storyteller in me is going, but why start with the Second Age when the First Age is right there? Like from a storytelling perspective, I'm like, I just find it not so neat to be starting with the Second Age, or maybe I could just do a George Lucas. It'll be fine. But and then of course there's so much more detail in the First Age as well.
Yes, there is. I'm excited. I'm excited to hear that. I mean, one of my favorite things that you've ever done, besides that Miyazaki shirt that you were wearing today, one of my favorite things that you've done is the exploration of the conflict of the Irish people amongst themselves. And the closest that most of us ever got to that in America, in cinema, was watching, like The Crying Game, or name an Irish director, and now all of a sudden,
Neil Jordan, Neil Jordan directed The Crying Game. He went on to direct an excellent film called Michael Collins.
That's the one.
Highly recommend that film.
That's the one.
That film was.
That's the one.
That was David Geffen's gift to Neil Jordan after he made Interview with the Vampire. He was like, okay, you made a really big successful movie for us. What project would you like to do? He's like, Michael Collins. I want to make a big budget movie about Irish history, and I'm doing Michael Collins. And so we cast Liam Neeson. And it is phenomenal. It is an absolutely brilliant film. I mean, I have my issues with certain historicity in it, and my dog decided to get super excited. Coo, out of there.
Your dog's name is Coo?
My dog's name is Coo. It's the
That's
Irish
what I know who that is in Irish folklore. But you know Tom Moore, who's the director of the wonderful movies Song of the Sea and the Secret of Kells. Well, in Song of the Sea, the little boy has a dog named Coo.
Named Coo, exactly. Well, that's our pup as well. Do you want to come up and say hello?
Yeah. Oh, look at the puppers.
Isn't he gorgeous?
Oh, he is. He's beautiful.
And he should be asleep, but no, he decided now is the time to come and chat. But yeah, Michael, if someone is looking for a good kind of primer into early modern Irish history, into like the Easter Rising, War of Independence, Civil War, Michael Collins is a great kind of base to go by. It's one of those films. So there was a funny thing that happened all the way kind of for years and years was movie certification between the UK and Ireland. Ireland was always that little bit more conservative. Like if a movie was like 15s in the UK, it would be 18s in Ireland. You know, if it was 12s in the UK, it would be 15s in Ireland. Michael Collins was one of those few exceptions where it was one of those few exceptions where the Irish censorship board made it PG, because they were like, despite the violence, despite the bad language, this is an important film for young Irish people to see. So
let me ask you this. Do you think Liam Neeson would be a good fit for Amazon's second age, Lord of the Rings? Or is he too big, too popular, too not Middle-earth?
I'd say he could absolutely. I mean, if he can play Aslan, if he can play Qui-Gon Jinn, he can absolutely play anybody in Middle-earth. Cool. What are you doing?
Everyone in the chat room keeps asking why is Kelly disappearing? Well, she is a ring bearer, and you know,
I didn't know I was disappearing.
Disappearing and reappearing.
It just randomly like disappears you out. Hey, one of the reasons that we wanted John Ruddy on the show today is, let me bring this up for our viewers at home. John, you have been watching the old theatrical edits, and you posted this frame by frame, side by side analysis of what Lord of the Rings looks like in the theatrical versus the extended, and the color surprised you. Did you not know about the green tint on the Blu-rays?
I was not aware.
I didn't know.
I heard about the green tint for the first time last week when you started on talking about the 4K release, and I was like, the green tint, what's this? And myself and my wife, we decided to sorry guys, can you give me 2 seconds? My dog needs to go outside.
Yeah, Kelly, did you not hear about this?
I only heard about it after John posted about it, but I hadn't, and I was disappointed. I was like, what? There's that much more color?
And John only posted about it because Cliff did a conversation with Bill Hunt last week telling everybody about it. And so
yes, well, yeah, the people in the chat there are people right now in the live chat who are also responding and saying, I had no idea that there was a green tint that was stuck on the Blu-ray permanently. And you know, one person who was very kind on Twitter was asking, how did that green tint actually get there on that Blu-ray master in the first place? Which I really don't know how to answer.
I know how to answer that. Tell me,
Justin, because I would like to give this person a response. They're waiting on me to reply.
Sure. So when the movies are released in theaters, the director and the cinematographer often have a final say on the look of the image. So Andrew Lesnie and Peter Jackson, full on approved the theatrical cut, and that was the movie they wanted to show based on the expertise of theatrical distribution. And that's what we see in the DVDs. If you watch the extended edition DVDs, and the extended edition VHSs and the theatrical DVDs. That's what you see, Andrew Lesnie's vision.
Yeah.
What happens a lot is when they re-release these movies on Blu-ray and then 3D Blu-ray and then 4K, oftentimes they will go in and tweak the image just to do something different, and that way they can put on the packaging newly updated, fresh image transfer, whatever you want to call it. Most of the time, they do not consult the cinematographer or the director.
They might, the color correctionist,
or the color correctionist, or the color grader. It is someone else, usually at the DVD production house, that is very familiar with the DVD color spec, and and they keep track of like what are the most TVs out on the market right now, what color space do they have, what is the best way to present the Blu-ray on most DVDs. And so that's what happens. Now, famously, most directors and most cinematographers absolutely are not in this conversation. And I was recently listening to Roger Deakins' podcast. John, I don't know if you've been following Roger Deakins, the cinematographer behind Blade Runner and the assassination of Jesse James. He has a podcast that he started during quarantine. And it is the talk of the town. Everybody in the industry is fawning over the best podcast this year, possibly the best podcast, one of the best ever. It is Roger Deakins' talking shop with all of his friends. And Roger Deakins, in a recent episode, they talk about going back and doing a watch along of Shawshank Redemption, which he was a cinematographer for. And he said, his wife said it took them a couple hours to find a version to watch, because when they pulled it up on iTunes, the color grading was all off. So they went to Netflix, and the color grading was all off. And so they went to Amazon, and the color grading was... He said it literally took him 2 hours to find a version to watch that looked like the film he delivered. And the studio has never, ever contacted him for any of those changes. And he was so mad, as mad as an Oscar-winning cinematographer can be. So...
And this is the thing. If this is your art, if this is your craft, you know what it is that you created. And it's like a musician hearing something in a different key, or you're like, that's not right. That's not what I made. And I can totally understand that. Like, and in the same way, like I'd been watching, so the reason why I wasn't aware of the green tint or whatnot was because I wasn't as I wasn't as savvy whenever the Blu-rays first came out, and whenever they did come out, I was like, oh cool, I guess I'm now putting my DVDs to the side, and now it's Blu-rays that I watch when I do my annual extended edition marathon. And so I just grew used to what the green tint was. I wasn't aware that that's what I was watching. But then myself and my wife, we decided to do a marathon of the theatrical cuts, partially because we'd already done the extended cut earlier this year, and I was like, we don't necessarily have to do the entire day, but also because I never watched the theatrical cuts anymore.
Right.
Like I've like the only time really that I've kind of seen the theatrical cuts in the last 10 years was probably whenever they do the RTE Symphony Orchestra in Dublin. They did a live score performance of each movie. So they took one and did it each year, and so I went to each concert,
right?
And it was the theatrical cuts, and that was gonna. But when you're watching them, first of all, I was like instantly, because I'd been just recently made aware of the green tint. All of a sudden, I was looking at the color, and I was like, "This is beautiful. What is this? This is gorgeous." I couldn't get over just how
It's a whole different vibe. Yeah, it's
Wow.
vibrant. Now, Cliff,
Yeah.
remind people what we learned from Bill Hunt at the Digital Bits last week. Is this new 4K re-release going back to what Andrew Lesnie delivered?
It's going back to what they call the OCN. And I actually have a photographer friend here in West Los Angeles. Her name is Megan. Megan and I used to work at the Cinerama Dome. And working there with the projectionist at the world famous ArcLight Cinerama Dome, there were a lot of conversations that we had, technical conversations about projection, about how light particles travel through the air to the projection screen, you name it, luminosity of the bulb and all the equipment. And she said, in her experience, nothing is better than going back to the original camera negative, but photographers never call it that. They call it the OCN. And going to the original camera negative for the process of making a 4K presentation of the film means that it is removing a lot of intermediary process steps that come from making it theatrically presented on a 35 millimeter film projected in a theater. Because as Bill explained to us last week, in the original state of getting a film ready for projection in a regular theater, you have to start with the original camera negative, and you have to scan it in to what I think he called it an inter negative, I think.
Yeah.
And then there's another step, and then there's another step, and then there's another step, and it adds on. And then there's back in the day, there was chemical processing of an actual film. It wasn't a digital box, a server that got plugged into the projector. There were giant platters of 35 millimeter film that went on and on and on forever.
That's right. And for people in the chat room, people in the chat room asking which one is the correct version, left or right, we're showing John Ruddy's tweet again. The one on the left is what Andrew Lesnie wanted you to see. And unfortunately, Andrew Lesnie's no longer with us, so he could not oversee any of these digital releases. I believe the streaming versions that you can find on HBO Max or Amazon or Netflix include the green tint. So it has been a long time since we've had what Andrew Lesnie wanted to show us. And Cliff learned last week that Weta is overseeing this digital transfer, so it will be as close. Now, Kelly, I wanted to ask you, because you wrote the book Middle Earth Script to Screen. You went to New Zealand. You were hands-on with all of the Weta artists. Do they take every detail of color seriously at all levels? There's the book.
There's the book. I got it here.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that.
Look at that tome.
It is. It's hardcore.
Yeah.
It is. It's heavy. It's a tome.
Kelly,
indeed it is.
Kelly, when you were co-writing that book with Daniel Falconer, did you get the sense that every decision is intentional?
Absolutely. I mean, on Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
a lot of those people who worked, behind the scenes, there were huge periods where they didn't know if it was going to get made. They didn't know if they were going to get paid. They didn't know if it was going to make any money, but it was such a labor of love that they wanted to keep doing it. And I think that that's why those films have touched so many people's lives, including mine, is because the passion comes through and the love and the loyalty comes through. And
That's true.
I didn't have a chance to say it yet, but John, I'm wearing my Irish costume. I don't know if it's still there, but I have droplets of rain all on my hair because I was just out hiking.
Oh, wonderful.
So Kelly, every department took every detail seriously, down to how the colors presented themselves on set. And if I remember correctly, like if the lights were a certain color and the camera was showing up a weird color, they would just go in and repaint something or re-sew something to make
Huh.
sure that the director's vision of color was accurately represented on the film. Like
Yeah,
every department.
it's very impressive to me.
So this is kind of a big deal that here up to now we haven't really been exposed to a high definition version of what we saw in our mind's eye, in our real eye that has
And
been in our mind.
what's really intriguing about it is the fact that because the technology that existed in the early 2000s when they were being scanned from the originals was, I think what they were saying was 2K back in the day, whereas now they're being rescanned in 4K, so they are more detailed than they have ever been. You know, they've been presented in a more detailed way than they've ever been, even on the big screen. You know, on the big screen we were watching it in essentially 2K, whereas these will be more detailed. Like, I mean, because The Hobbit, it was shot in 5K, so you know it'll be what it is. But it's a fascinating process, and like even just looking at the technology that they were using, and even the difference in the technology between the making of the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, where you know with The Hobbit they were using digital technology at that point. But it's fascinating, you know, just to see the evolution of that craft and how like the more. So I've also just finished the journey of watching all of the appendices all the way through from Fellowship to Battle of Five Armies, and it's one thing that really strikes you, particularly with Lord of the Rings, is we are so lucky that those films got made. We are so lucky that those films are as good as they are. Like, in a lot of ways, those films are taped together at the seams. Like, and so I was there was a conversation going on Twitter about you know, like mistakes that you can see, like that you can spot in Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings is full of them. Be it, you know, whenever Gandalf's sitting into the table and Bag End, his half of the table shakes, but the back half stays still because of the forced perspective effect. You know, the
Well, let me bring up the tweet that you also posted this weekend of the riding through Gondor and seeing a village on fire in the background that you
through
had
Rohan.
never through Rohan.
Yes.
You had never seen that before.
Yeah, I like these movies are just the gifts that keep on giving. Um,
Indeed.
I
Indeed.
have seen that shot so many times. In
So many
fact,
times.
I used that shot in a so there's been a music video that has been going around in my head for at least 10 years, and that was I always wanted to do a Tolkien music video of Stairway to Heaven. And this year I was like, right, I'm finally going to do it. And so I put it together and I edited it and I used that shot. And it was literally this time watching it that I noticed this burning village in the background. I'm like, how have I not seen this before? And it went and like for a split second I was like, did they take it out of the extended edition and it's only in the theater? I was like, no, that's a bit silly. Why would they do that? But no, it's always been there, and I just never noticed it.
So are you going to get the 4K release just to discover more of this?
Oh, absolutely. Now, the only thing is, I'm going to also need all of the technology.
I need a TV. I need a Blu-ray. I need a 4K player.
like I mean, you know, technically the TV that I have at the moment, I mean, it's not the world's biggest TV, but like technically it doesn't exactly benefit from HD, even like from Blu-ray, because like we watched the theatrical cuts that we watched were the DVDs from 2001, 2, and 3. So technically 2002, 3, and 4 when they were released. I'm a geek. But you know, they looked perfect on that TV. So like it's only once the TV starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger that you really start to get it. But I think I will invest in the 4K or at least invest in the 4K films, and then later the technology will come. I'll be sitting on them for years, and I'll be like, oh, finally, I'm going to get a 4K TV so I can watch, or even
Yes,
project it.
4K. Lord of the Rings was the reason I got a Blu-ray player, and
Yes.
Lord of the Rings will be the reason I get a 4K player.
Yeah.
Like
Me
this is
too.
these are the movies, the only movies I want to watch, and I don't even want to stream it. And to be clear, to answer a bunch of people's questions in the chat, this 4K release that's coming out in 3 weeks in December and re-release next year does not include the appendices. It is only the movie. The expectation from the studio is you guys already have the appendices. We got nothing more to show you. We're not going to up-res the appendices. So we're only getting the movie in 4K. And then next year, we're going to get...
That's right, movie only. These discs that are coming out this fall, or this winter, if you want to call it that, are going to be movie only. And Justin, I'm sure that you've seen the questions about the Unicorn Edition that we have touted as part of like the biggest anticipated
Well, you shot
thing.
that down last week. You put a stake in the unicorn last week.
And I did, and I'm afraid we have to do it again because we're talking about a lot of other supplemental materials and outtakes and blooper reels and deleted scenes and mountains of material, that Warner Brothers is not going to up-res and put on this 4K edition. And it's not there. It was not in the announcement and the press release. What they said they were going to add on next year was one piece of content, and they just called it mysteriously extra content. They don't describe it. We don't know what it is. And
this is the definitive version, though, that like the Unicorn Edition is going to be basically the edition that comes out next year.
Yeah, but people want to know, where will there be a living, breathable place for all that other missing material? And we don't really know yet. We don't know.
Stream it? Just like put it onto a streaming service. I'd buy that.
I'd sign up for HBO Max immediately. Did you know
there you go.
That they filmed?
There's an idea.
They filmed Faramir and Éowyn's wedding.
Really?
They filmed
Ooh.
the wedding of Faramir and Éowyn with brand new costumes from Weta Workshop, full wedding outfits. No one's ever seen it. There were only rumors. We had never been able to verify it. And during the first weeks of quarantine, Miranda Otto was going through some old photos and casually posted a photo from her wedding to David Wenham in character, and everyone freaked out. It's real. Kelly, is that something that they should add back into the movie?
I mean, only if they had enough footage that they could do it justice. You know, I mean, I think there's a reason some stuff didn't end up in it.
Yeah.
But that's something, of course, we'd love to see. I'd love to see if they could do it, if they had enough material, you know.
I mean, if they filmed it, I mean, they must have coverage. Let me ask you this, Kelly. When you were writing the book with Weta Workshop, was there any particular thing that the artists were kind of sad that didn't make it into the film?
I can only really speak to conversations Daniel and I were having as two geeks, you know, two Tolkien geeks, was basically everything from the books that doesn't make it in. Eladon and Elro here, you know, we were really pushing to try to have them included. Any concept art for Gilran. I wanted also to have a lot more translations of the Elvish, but that's kind of different. But because a lot of the chanting that's going on in the background of these scenes is actually pertinent to what's happening in the scene and what's happening in the story. It's helping move the story, and it's adding like another layer of depth. But of course, most of us don't speak Elvish, so we can't hear the lament from Mithrandir. But
I bet you they say nothing about his fireworks.
The so looking forward to what is upon us, Amazon is now the stewards of Lord of the Rings. I think
are now the stewards.
Are now the stewards of Lord of the Rings. I think the history of Middle Earth and I think they are the best suited stewards we could hope for, because there's nothing more than you want, controlling Tolkien right now than the richest man in the history of the world, who is a super fan and is willing to spend
The most
whatever it
important part of that
takes.
sentence is super fan.
Super fan, right? Spending whatever he wants to put whatever the creatives want to put to screen. Do you think?
Yet they seem to have a driven interest in differentiating themselves to distinctly make what they are doing different from the existing 6 films in Middle Earth.
So this will be a different version of Middle Earth.
I don't think so. I think
that's what they told us with The Hobbit. When Guillermo was on board, remember when it was Guillermo?
Although I think with
that's true.
Guillermo, it would have been a very different vision.
Which, from what I found out about, creative differences, creative choices that he was going to make, it would have been dramatically different. And source material.
Did you hear, Kelly?
A lot of clockwork, apparently.
A lot of
he loves his clock.
Yeah, a lot of work.
Clockwork.
Sorry, clockwork.
A lot of cogs and mechanics and kind of. It's a very common theme in a lot of his films. You got it in Pan's Labyrinth. You got it in Hellboy 2. There's a lot of. He loves all that kind of mechanical stuff.
Yeah, well, it all started with Kronos. Definitely. You're right. Yeah. Kelly, had you heard about the rumor of Beorn's house getting up on chicken legs like Baba Yaga's hut and walking around the forest? Did you hear that, Kelly?
I didn't hear that one. No.
Because I don't know if it was Daniel Falconer, but there was somebody who had shared with me a concept art story about, you would not believe what Guillermo del Toro is doing with Beorn. He's going to have his house get up on chicken legs and walk around Mirkwood like Baba Yaga. And I thought, oh, wow, that's going to be strange. But, it never happened. File that under The Hobbit that never was. It never was.
And some of the stuff that I did have a glimpses of some of his concept figures and models and stuff. And in all fairness, some of it, though, I was looking at, and it didn't even occur to me that it wasn't the same designs as The Hobbit, like they'd gotten that far to make maquettes and everything. And it wasn't until it was probably Daniel as well. Someone pointed out to me that, like, oh, those are from, when he was in charge. And I was like, oh, I guess they're different. But maybe I'm just not that type of fan that I'm looking at. John would be better. John would have noticed. John's an artist and the type of meticulous fan who would notice that warg's face looks quite different.
Speaking of Beorn, Guillermo had hired Ron Perlman to play Beorn, and
he would have done a good job.
And I think that is the most perfect actor to play Beorn. And of course, when Guillermo left, to change in direction. But we've got news from the Mark. We've got news about Lord of the Rings on Amazon. So to catch everybody up, and John and Kelly,
ladies and gentlemen, that means that Justin is about to say something that I have no idea what he's going to say.
Well, several weeks ago, we reported that the actress from the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean movies, She was also
Yes.
in the TV show Skins. Her name's
Oh,
Kaya Scodelario.
Yes.
She
Yeah.
is a Brazilian-born English actress, um, and she's a spitting image of Arwen, Liv Tyler. We reported about a month ago that she was on the show, and people have been debating me ever since. In fact, there's someone in the chat room that has a $5 bet that she is not going to be in the show. And the funny part is that her best friends on Instagram, had photoshopped her face onto a poster of Lord of the Rings and said, "Enjoy New Zealand." And I saw it, and then she deleted it. So that was the first tip off. But then she flew to New Zealand, and then she flew to Canada, and she's been filming the new Resident Evil movie in Canada, in the same city that Ian McKellen was shooting X-Men when Lord of the Rings was filming.
Yes.
Well, let me bring it up on screen for our people at home. She just posted this on Instagram yesterday. Kaya posted a photo wearing some swimwear saying, "Looking forward to a January summer." And the only place in the world that has a January summer is New Zealand.
Well, you mean
She's also
anywhere
from-
in the southern
yeah,
hemisphere?
Australia and South Africa.
Yeah. Anywhere in the southern hemisphere, please. Yeah.
But she's definitely not going to be in Canada in January. So what we understand is that all of the cast of Lord of the Rings for Amazon have friended her on Instagram. I mean, come on, like
All roads, yeah.
all
So
roads.
what a difference between when Lord of the Rings was being made and now this. Like, we can spy on actors and their social media activity and try to deduce things, and then you wonder, is it genuine or is it staged? Is it, like,
Or even like 10 years ago, whenever we were now 10 years ago now, when we were speculating about the Hobbit, like that was when I first really got into the OneRing.net. And I remember I was in university. Yeah, like I was a bit too young for getting in on all the speculation for Lord of the Rings. But
Don't make me feel old, John.
What's that?
Don't make me feel old,
I know,
John.
right? But like I remember I would go on to the OneRing.net every single day. I was in university at the time, and every single day looking for updates. And like even now, just with social media the way it is now, it's completely different.
Yeah,
I remember checking the One Ring like at least 3 times a day once they announced that they're making the Hobbit.
Yeah.
The crazy thing about the Hobbit years, not only did Warner Brothers send like 100 fans to New Zealand, like who does that, the Hobbit fan contest, but the surprise Kelly and Alex had of waking up and they're on Peter Jackson's Facebook page. And the cast, Orlando Bloom is reacting to your reaction.
Going, do you know that you're on Peter Jackson's Facebook?
That's right. That's right.
I
was never gonna check. I didn't have a smartphone. I just had the habit of turning on my laptop and like checking my email and stuff one last time before bed. And one of my friends here, Tony, had texted me saying your video's famous or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, you're just whatever. I didn't even know what he was talking about. And then it wasn't until I signed on line, and John and I at that point, we hadn't met each other in person. We'd met in the Torn Tuesday chat room, right, in Barlaman's.
Yeah, this was even before Torn Tuesdays.
So we were in Barlaman's chat, and then we became friends on Facebook. So then you'd messaged me on Facebook saying Peter Jackson shared your video, and I was like, and I was still thinking, what video? Because who would watch that? And who would share it? And who would think that it was something even worth like exposing to a bigger audience? But I can see it from their point of view now. At the time, I was just like, it's just me and my sister being like, oh my God, yay! Which is just like how we were living our daily lives at the time. But now I can see it from their point of view, and I can understand why,
Yeah.
why they wanted to share
And
the
you can see it,
enthusiasm.
like there's almost going to become a wee bit of cynicism now, just with regards kind of social media and stuff. But you could see there 10 years ago how a lot of companies, a lot of studios were really trying to work out how this whole social media thing was. So there was a lot of experimentation, a lot of, like, the DVD codes of getting that special half-hour preview with Peter Jackson for Desolation of Smog and
Oh
different
yeah.
things like that. There was all of these. They were trying out loads of different things, and some of the things worked, some of them not so much. But it was quite fascinating, and like particularly thinking back now. A lot of the different things that they tried, but one thing that really struck me from those posts, and even then watching the appendices again, was the whenever they came back to make The Hobbit, they knew the fans were there, they knew the fans were watching, and they were able to refer to the Lord of the Rings, like particularly a lot of the stuff that they did with Legolas, like playing the Lord of the Rings music while he was shooting, and they're taking the hobbits to Isengard and stuff. It's like it is now a meme, and it's just a fascinating kind of like a victory lap almost. Like I went to the London premiere of Unexpected Journey, just as a fan, because I'd been following it so much, and I found out that the London premiere was on whatever day. I was like, I'm going to go to London, and I'm going to go to Leicester Square, and I'm going to stand by the side of the red carpet, or what it turned out was a green carpet for that. And I stood there the whole day, froze my backside off, and met loads of really fascinating people either side of me. Went on an unexpected date afterwards. And I shook hands with everybody who was involved in the film, and it was funny too, because I had been following it, like there were loads of people who were there because they just go to premieres every week and just meet random celebrities. But there were so many people who didn't know a lot of the dwarf actors, and I was like, I know this guy. He's the guy who plays Bomber. He's so it was really fun. And then I actually met Jimmy Nesbitt. Afterwards, he was out kind of getting a sneaky cigarette afterwards. And I went up to him and I had to compliment him because his accent is very similar to my own. He too is from the north of Ireland. And I was like, it's great to hear a good Ulster accent in there as well.
Oh, yes. That's awesome.
I remember at the Hollywood premiere, we made a big stink. The fans and the One Ring especially made a big stink out of the final premiere of Battle of Five Armies in Hollywood. They were not going to fly out the dwarven actors from New Zealand, and we put up a big stink and said, as fans, we've given you over $2 billion for these Hobbit movies. We know they're not going to win any awards. Can you at least treat the actors right? And Kelly, I just remember the night before the premiere, there were a bunch of fans camped out, like John was at Leicester Square. Fans camped out in Hollywood Boulevard. Some had driven 1,000 miles from Utah and Colorado to get a glimpse of the actors during the premiere. And Kelly, what happened that night?
Didn't you walk my mom back to the hotel? Isn't that how you found them?
I think so. Yeah.
Somehow we'd ended up out drinking and arm wrestling with a bunch of dwarves.
Graham McTavish, Dean O'Gorman.
Which was a fantastic, joyous night. But we were all hanging out, and then you came back and you said there's fans already camped out. And someone, maybe it was my sister, someone's like, you should surprise them. And they were bashful about it. They said, oh, but we're not in costume. I don't think they'll recognize us. And I'm like, dude, these are people so dedicated that at okay, I guess it was like 2 a.m. We were out late. I'm like, these are people who at 2 a.m. in the cold, because it was still like in the 50s in LA then. I'm like, they're camping out and you think that they're not going to recognize you just because you don't have your fake nose on? And they're like, okay, let's go say hi. If you think it's safe, like if you think that we're not gonna make fools of ourselves, and it's like trust our nerd wisdom. Like,
so you literally, Kelly drags the actors out of the pub booth down the street, and boy, I've never seen such
It
surprise
was
and glee.
so cute. It made me feel like Santa Claus. I wasn't, I'm not famous. I don't like I'm not personally good friends with any of these people, but I knew the joy that it would bring those fans. So yeah, walking down, and I think we had one of them. I think we were like, okay, you can't just go up and say hi. You need to do something funny. And so I can't remember what happened. Alex has it all on film, but I think Graham came up behind one of the fans and just tapped her on the shoulder, and she looked and then was like, like did a double take.
Double take.
It was so cute. And then we all took a group photo and hung out for a little bit, and some of us all became friends because obviously we're mega fans too. And they were just so thankful, and it just, I don't know. I'm like, if I was someone's manager or something, I'd be awful. I'd be making them do that stuff all the time. I'm like, it costs you nothing, and that person's gonna talk about it for like the rest of their life.
That's right. That's right.
Totally.
But
well,
they were all very happy they did it afterward.
John, you on YouTube, you have nearly 250,000 subscribers on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, you are a legit YouTuber. Like,
I got my silver play button up on the wall there.
That's awesome. Yes, you do have your silver play button. I just saw that.
So
Great stuff.
my question is, how can we? You got any tips for us lowly torn people? Like,
get in a time machine and go back 7 years to when YouTube was a very different place. Because if I were starting again now, I do not think I could do it, because YouTube is just such a different place now. And there was a point earlier this year where I was actually starting to like fall back down the hill a little bit, and there was a drop off of subscribers, which was slightly concerning, but I have since rejigged things and I'm gaining subscribers again, which is nice. I got a lot of my big kind of bulk of my subscribers early on. Actually, that's a slight lie. I mean, it has been a slow and steady climb. You don't get that kind of stuff overnight. Although it has been interesting, there have been some people who have literally just started that. Like there's this one girl who I have been watching on YouTube. She just does reactions to movies, and one of the first
Kelly knows about reactions.
Yeah, and she had never watched the Lord of the Rings films, and so she did like a multi-part reaction to her watching Lord of the Rings.
Those are fun.
Over the space of the lockdown, so she started at the beginning of the lockdown, and she's now well over 100,000 subscribers, and I'm just like I've been doing this for 7 years. I've been
doing this for 7 years. We've been doing this podcast.
This is not to diss my almost 250,000. I'm thoroughly grateful for that, absolutely. But just watching someone reach half of that in the space of a couple of months, and I'm just like doing something that is so much less labor intensive than what I do, and I'm just
is there some basic stuff that I'm missing for the One Rings YouTube channel that is preventing us from just kind of because I feel like I don't know, we've kind of stalled in the subscriber count on YouTube.
Hobbit 5 was really good when it was going. I know that's a while ago now, but Hobbit 5 I found was really good because it was new content. It was updates.
Yeah.
That came up and I find that was really good. It was always it was a nice wee thing. It was simple. It was 5 minutes away, literally 5 minutes, and away you went.
Do we need to update our thumbnails with a different concept, or do we need to do
I think there's
content?
I think there's a big difference between the audience being attracted to live stream versus a production, like the type of material that you make, John, which includes music, animation, careful editing, and everything is like a whole package. And I think that might be an ingredient that brings in a different audience, because I don't know why, but maybe my instincts are wrong, because I do see a lot of Twitch streamers having massive audiences with just live content, but John, don't you think the people who do it more classic, like Nerd Writer, like Collision Crew, who do reviews of visual effects and animation, do you think that people who prepare their videos have an advantage over a live stream?
To be honest, it really depends. I think one of the core things is the person who's doing it and what that person brings to it. And some people are just really good at live streaming. Some people are just really good at being good company. And although the thing with live streaming is you'll often find it's folks who have an established audience then go into live streaming. And from there, that community is there. Oh yeah, I want to spend time with this person while they draw or while they watch something or while they play a video game. Whereas if you're starting out trying to live stream, that can be a trickier thing. Like, I mean, here you just have a great, ready-made audience for people who want updates on all things Tolkien, all things Lord of the Rings. And yeah, I think focusing on that and building on that, I think is probably one of the keys that you can do.
I think Happy Hobbit could be bigger than our channel, But again, do you feel like the YouTube, to be successful on YouTube, you really have to like treat it like a job and get into a grind of like every week we got like, or every other day, like what do you have to treat it like that?
Yeah, it's I do this all full time. I've been doing this full time now for the
full time. You're making YouTube content full time, 40 hours a week.
Well, I'm doing more than 40 hours a week. Oh God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I've a combination of making YouTube videos, of acting, of writing, of kind of working on, but essentially working full time as a creative, self-employed person.
John let me your acting skills recently.
Yes, I did. Tell them more.
John did a narration for my most recent film that came out just after Halloween. It was a short film called Be Thou a Witch.
Yes, you did. John, Kelly, you guys holding back on us now.
Yes, Kelly asked me very briefly would I do a couple of these lines, and I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so I sat down for 20 minutes and gave her loads of different options of,
that was very entertaining to listen to, by the way, because
I was giving her a running commentary while I was doing it. It's like, okay, so yeah, you might want this. Do you know what? I'm going to try this a little happier just to see how it sounds. Do you know what? I'm going to give you this, just see what. Do you know? I'm going to do this entire thing. I've been doing it in an English accent. I'm going to do this whole thing in a German accent now. Just the option.
but also to hear like you reflecting on what you were actually reading, because I don't expect many people watching this to have seen my video, but it was I'm juxtaposing, I want to say womanhood as witchhood, because I don't know if people know, but there's this resurgence in interest in the occult and witchcraft, especially with women and with it being a feminist thing. So
and studies in Wicca. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And my video is kind of centered around the fact that in English, we don't have a word for woman that doesn't include man. We have a woman, a man, and we have a female. So
which is a linguistic coincidence, but yeah, I agree.
But when you know what happened during the European witch trials, when you know the politics behind it, it's just gross. It is misogyny unleashed, and it wasn't against witches. It was against women. Any women who you wanted to get rid of, you called them a witch. So the idea behind my video was kind of to be like, maybe we're all witches then, like whether you actually identify with the spirituality or not, we're all witches in that lens. So to juxtapose that, I needed a male to read quotes from the Malleus Maleficarium, which was a book written that basically made the European witch trial spread like wildfire. And if you read it, it is just a treatise of hate against women. And the quotes, the gross part to me as like someone who's very interested in the classics and literature, a lot of the quotations that he draws upon as he makes his argument against women are taken directly from the classics, from Seneca, one supposedly even from the Bible, and it's just heinous stuff. But as John's recording this, every once in a while he'll go quiet and he'll go, "What a beep. Like, this guy was such a like," and I'm like, yeah, like it's heavy stuff, but bringing you in on that really, really helped, because I do all my stuff just by myself now, and it's hard to say the least. Like, you have a creative vision and you're like, okay, I can't do what I want. What can I do with just myself? And then I'm like, I've got friends who are really talented.
Yes.
And
yes.
I've always wanted to work with John. So
how fabulous.
It was fun.
Yeah.
And he did a fantastic
I love
job.
it. And any excuse to do some fun accents as I was doing in that one. He was very interesting altogether.
So as we start wrapping up, we have it on good authority that Amazon powers that be watch this show loyally and are paying attention to what the fans have to say. What do you guys think would? What do you guys kind of expect, or maybe think should happen during the marketing of this new show? With no conventions next year or anything like that. Like, everything's going to be online, and we can't do those fan experiences in theaters. So and it's a TV show. Like, how should Amazon approach the marketing of this show? Because
I have news from the Mark that you don't know, Justin, and perhaps it could tie into this conversation.
Green Dragon Gossip.
Green Dragon Gossip. It's now time for that wonderful section of our show where we throw caution to the wind. Oh, wait, that's all the time. And here we go. I've been hearing that in New Zealand, where they're filming the Amazon series, they are striking the sets, which means they are striking them completely, tearing them down, putting everything away, and putting all the dust covers on everything. And that means that they're not going back to shoot more and more material. And if this is tying into the discussion of how the studio could market the series over a year with no conventions and no events happening, if it's true, if what I heard is true, that they have decided to strike the sets and put things away, that means they are not coming back to film pickups, no pickup shoots, no additional principal photography, and that people are going to be sent home. And this leads me to believe, and this is something else we discussed as a rumor, that these 2 episodes directed by Mr. Bayona are going to be a litmus test that they're going to look at, present to, and I said this before on this very show, they're going to make this a possible test to show to the family, the Tolkien estate, and to Jeff Bezos, and they're going to show it to the board, whoever the controlling interests are at Amazon Studios, and they're going to get a check mark to go, pass. You get a pass, go ahead, keep making the show. And then they'll reconvene and start working on it all again. Mm-hmm. Or they're going to get shut down by the family. And if the Tolkien estate says, we don't like that, we don't like that, and the reason why, and maybe Kelly, you can corroborate this, but the Tolkien estate does not get deeply involved in looking at the day-to-day, like the photography of the day, or the daily rushes, as they used to call it back when they were making daily rushes in the 30s and 40s. So I got a feeling that the Tolkien estate will wait until the very end and look at what they've made and then give a judgment on whether they like it or not. This is Green Dragon speculation. Don't take it as fact from me, but it's kind of like if you were Ted Naismith and you were making a Tolkien painting, the Tolkien estate would wait until the very end of the process of painting on the canvas, not early on when there was just draft sketches, but then they would say, oh, at the very end, very near the end, when the last brush was going to be applied to the canvas, and the Tolkien estate would weigh in with their opinions whether it was good to go or needed to be changed.
Oh my
Which
gosh,
would
it's every freelancer's worst nightmare.
every freelancer's worst nightmare. So I heard that they are from a reliable source. I heard they're striking the sets in Auckland, and that means if there's not going to be any marketing at all this year. I want to get back to your question, Justin. I have a sneaking feeling that there will not be anything about this series that we're going to see until 2022. This is my prediction.
You know, there's a lot to unpack there, and we could do a whole episode on everything you just said. The one thing I want to just laser focus on right now is you put a lot of weight behind the opinion of the Tolkien estate and what control they may or may not have, or input they may not have. Christopher Tolkien's dead, and no one else in the family has published anything related to Middle Earth. Who at the Tolkien estate has any right to have any opinion on this? Take the check and walk away. Let the creatives do their thing. I don't know. Maybe you have a different opinion, John Ruddy?
Well, I mean, I can understand. Well, I mean, obviously, you know, Christopher was very much the gatekeeper of his father's work.
Well earned.
And thank God for simple truths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose there are certain elements that I would imagine that anybody within the family who cares about it as much as Christopher would have, that I suppose they probably, you know, a lot of people have been kind of talking about, oh, would it become like a kind of a Game of Thronesy kind of a thing, you know, where there's more adult content in it, or, you know, there's sex, or there's, you know, whatever in it. First of all, I would point out the story of Turin Turambar is dark as all hell, and you couldn't really do that story outside of at least a 15's age rating. But I can understand that there is a certain element of what is Tolkien and what is not Tolkien. And to be quite honest, for example, the thing that pops into my mind, and it's funny because I've heard a lot of people who worked on the film also say it while they were designing it, but saying the likes of the Battle of the Five Armies, I have a massive objection to the big giant multi-amputated troll thing that they all lovingly called Stumpy. I like that. That's not Tolkien. You know, there's things that are Tolkien, like you know, there's taking liberties, and there is like that's something out of Warcraft. That's something out of Warhammer. You know, that is derisive of Tolkien, but it's not Tolkien. There is a certain kind of purity to Tolkien that I would imagine they may look to maintain, may look to protect, and make sure that it doesn't kind of go down the road that becomes not Tolkien, if you know what I mean.
I appreciate that. I, for one, appreciate that.
How do you mitigate that though? Like, I'm just spinning off the top of my head here, and I don't think this is a length any studio would go to, is have a folklorist in the writing room, have a mythologist in the writing room, because if you're deviating from Tolkien's material but you want it to be true in tone, then you need to not look at the stuff that's been derivative of Tolkien. You need to go back to his sources of inspiration and have there be a sense of history and authenticity in terms of where is this story coming from. Because like what I love about Tolkien's work is it feels like it is coming from the very roots of the earth up.
Yeah.
It is this ancient old living thing, and because of that it's completely believable. It does, you know, he accomplished what he set out to accomplish by creating a mythology for England. But
like something that I always find bizarre is that The Hobbit is a much newer book than The Wizard of Oz, and yet The Hobbit feels so much older than The Wizard of Oz. You know? and that is, it's part of the language. It's part of just it's so deeply
It's the
rooted.
language, but it's also going back to what you were talking about earlier, where he spent an entire chapter talking about a
The
landscape, or pages talking
Yes.
about a tree, because our
Yeah.
ancestors, the people who told these yarns, lived in such close connection with the earth.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There were things that they didn't even need to say in the story because the audience would get it. But most of the magic comes from earth magic. Most of the stories involve the natural landscape because
Yeah.
that was very much a
Mm.
part of daily life, and it still is now. We just choose not to see it that way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think the more removed you
Cities are
get
built
from the
where they
natural
are for
world,
reasons.
yeah, the more removed the story becomes from the natural world, I think that's, for me at least, that's when it starts to feel like candy sticking to my teeth. I'm like, you're just
Yeah.
now it's losing that connection.
Kelly,
Mhm.
going back to what you were saying earlier about
Well said.
your video with John talking about the witches and the language used to name call. How do you reconcile the fact that The Hobbit had no women, no female characters? Tolkien didn't, other than Eowyn, making the big thing. Like it most people categorize Tolkien's stories as men doing manly things. And everyone knows the drama that culture made around adding a woman to the Hobbit movies, and a love triangle. Like, how, I guess the question is, how can Amazon head off that debate early on? Because, like, this isn't going to be a male dominated series. Galadriel's the lead character. uh More than half the cast are accomplished actresses. So how do we reconcile what Tolkien wrote, stories about men doing manly things, and this new show by Amazon that is centered around powerful women? How can the fans
Well,
prepare for this?
You
the
go
Hmm.
if you're going my route, you go to Celtic mythology instead of Norse mythology necessarily, and
Boom.
you
That's
Mhm.
the
start,
answer.
and because
Mhm.
it's full of really incredibly women with agency. I hate saying strong women because that infers that women
Morrigan.
are inherently weak. But like um and Tolkien, you could argue about how much he did draw from any form of Celtic mythology, how much of that ever really came to fruition. I feel like there's definitely a sense of it. Um and I think that when they're making The Hobbit, they didn't put this music in it, but it's in the soundtrack. They had Uilleann, John, correct my pronunciation, Uilleann pipes,
Ellen pipes.
Ellen pipes.
Yeah.
You know me and my Irish; it's still very rude.
Ellen is the Irish for elbow, and it's this.
Ah,
Anytime you hear well, like bagpipes, we all know what bagpipes sound like, but Ellen pipes are a type of bagpipe, but rather than blowing into it, you pump it with a pump in your elbow, hence it's called an Ellen pipe. But it's more kind of associated with Irish traditional music. But yeah, go on, Kelly.
go Mahagut.
Fancy roll.
So they were actually incorporating it into some of the themes for the dwarves, and you could see that in the original soundtrack for the first film. I don't think any of that ended up in the movie, which I was a little disappointed with, because I was like, that would have gone in a really cool musical direction.
Yeah.
But going back to Tolkien, you could say Feely was the name Feely taken from, the Celtic world of old, because that was what the class of scholars were known as that. Maybe that's a weak connection because I don't really see anything in Feely's character that would suggest that he was consciously doing that. But but if you want to look at something that's still rooted in mythology, close, England used to be Celtic before they were conquered a bunch, but close to his sources of inspiration, you could look at Celtic mythology and see these incredibly empowered women who are just going around taking names and changing the world.
Yeah, Queen Maeve.
Indeed.
Yeah.
There's so many fans in the live chat. who I'd
Boudica.
love to acknowledge.
We still haven't seen Boudica put to screen.
Hey, that's an awesome story. I love that. And you suddenly brought to mind Enya, and what was the name of her band before she was solo? It was Clannad. Okay, you've suddenly reminded me of some of the best.
Up the road from me.
Oh yeah,
Really?
I love that music so much. Wow, that's great. Oh my gosh, small world. But
By the way,
hold on. In the live chat, the people
I know.
are asking.
You mentioned Enya. Let me just say, Enya during quarantine has written an entire album in Elvish and supposedly recorded it. Enya, please release this. Give us the heavenly music of the elves that we want and need so desperately right now. Enya, please, Tolkien Estate, don't get all mixed up with money and stuff. Just let her publish her Elvish album. It exists. She wants to play in Middle Earth. She sings the laments of the elves. Like, I want this.
Wonderful. Okay,
anyway,
I'm down for that. But let's just say, okay, multiple Grammy winner and Oscar nominee, Enya.
Woman.
I love her. She has, all right, I just have a passion for Celtic music. I always have. Kelly, I don't know if I've ever admitted this to you, my dear, but I mean, I am all about the old mythologies and the weird folk tales, and John, I guess I'm admitting it to you too, but even though my family background and my genealogy is not Irish,
doesn't matter.
It's like an English German Euro mutt. I'm just a mutt, but there's something culturally, really culturally and aesthetically magnetic. It's magnetic. The Irish music and the stories and the interesting conflicts that they've had to put up with amongst themselves. I find all of it really compelling, to be honest. But here's the thing: when the fans are asking in the live chat, how are you going to put in all of these characters or women with agency when Tolkien's notes in the appendices are just, bullet points and a few paragraphs? And a couple of people in the chat have identified, well, they have a lot of breathing room where the writers are just going to make up stuff out of whole cloth. And Justin, you did ask the right question.
It's going to have to be necessary.
We need to brace ourselves for that. We need to prepare our mental state for that.
Particularly with the Second Age, because what Tolkien has written about the Second Age, and particularly what rights are available to what has been written about the Second Age, it's not a lot, and I think it speaks to the strength of Tolkien's writing that we think so much of what isn't a lot of content that he has written for, particularly the second. I mean, the First Age is the Silmarillion, but the Second Age is not hugely written about. So yeah, there's going to be a ton of invention, like there, all of the dialogue, like at least, with Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, it's like, oh, I recognize that line. That's the little piece of dialogue. But all of that dialogue has to be invented and created anew, really, because it's not there in the source material. And there's room for so many characters. There's room for so many new characters, and I think people can't really afford to be precious about it, because if it's based on a chapter, then there's either you're getting 2 episodes and that's it, or it's gonna be like, that's the joys of adaptation. Changes get made, and that's like that was one thing that I noticed, that I actually loved watching the theatrical cut as much as I love the extended cut. From an objective filmmaking perspective, The theatrical cuts, for the most part, are much better films, particularly
Yes.
Return of the King.
Yes.
The theatrical cut of Return of the King is so much better. I love the extended edition, and I love all of the added things. But see, Aragorn not knowing that they're going to show up with the Army of the Dead is so much better.
Yep.
And it you know, and from a film editing perspective, I love film editing and seeing how that magic can happen, and seeing it's amazing with such a knowledge of the extended editions, seeing what they were able to effectively cut out of a scene and have the scene work is just it's amazing to watch. And so with all of that in mind, as much as we can be precious about what's going to work with the books, there in this effort, or in this regard, it's actually going to be the opposite, where there's going to be a lot more enhancement, a lot more embellishment.
You're right. John, you're onto something that I said years ago. The success of The Lord of the Rings was because of how good it contracted and crystallized a massive story into a tasty concentrate.
Yeah.
The Hobbit had the problem of not trying to, bring things in, but The Hobbit had to expand and expand and expand.
It was butter scraped over too much bread.
There you go. Oh, perfect.
Final question before
perfect.
we let you guys go.
That's perfect.
What are you...
Oh, no, wait. I've got one last thing. Somebody in the chat said, should I go back and read the posthumous Christopher Tolkien books? Because I stopped looking at them decades ago. And to our friends in the chat, I say yes, please. It is definitely worth your time to go and pick up the copy of what Christopher Tolkien put together, Beren and Luthien,
Tales.
Especially.
No, that has nothing to do with the show. Beren and Luthien, nothing to do with the show.
I'm not saying it's relative to the Amazon show. I'm saying it's relative to the best stuff that you can get for your money.
Like to read, Justin.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So definitely get your hands on Children of Húrin, please. Beren and Luthien, Children of Húrin. Get your hands on those. You're gonna love it.
Do you hold that book up again, John? Do you remember, Cliff, that the outrage that some fans had? How dare they put a movie still on the cover of the book? How dare you? Like, do not diminish the.
This is the copy of The Lord of the Rings that I read for the first time. This was bought by my father as a Christmas present for me in 2001.
Okay, wow, that's great.
And I have since fully illustrated it with. So I used this to write my college dissertation, and so I did. Let's see, where are we? Let's get a good one. So anytime they used very specific imagery from the books, I would add it in into the books here. So like here, I don't know whether or not you'll see it, but like there's all sorts of little descriptions of the Éowyn fighting the Witch King. So these are all just
love that
details.
Look at that. That is amazing.
Yeah. So I had a lot of fun illustrating this, and the best thing was I was sitting here drawing all of these, and I was studying. This was studying. It was great. Everybody else was struggling over their dissertation, and I'm like, I'm drawing Lord of the Rings, and I got a first class honors on that dissertation.
Oh, dude.
Done.
Well done. Well,
that is so cool.
There's
cool.
The Witch King. There's the Witch King.
Whoa, John. Do you prefer having 3 volumes separate, or do you like it the way I like to read it? All I like 3 in a big chunky book. Yeah.
This is how I read it.
We recently posed that question on our Facebook and Twitter, and
yes, we did.
It was half and half. It was half. Like it was equally divided. So, final question: what one thing could you most be looking forward to in Amazon show? Is it exploring Galadriel's past more? Is it exploring the history of the dwarves? More about elves? More about Sauron? Is there one thing that is most intriguing about the show?
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to Sauron being a manipulative beast. I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, I think he's like Palpatine in the prequels, where you just
Really?
nobody. Well,
I picture him
exactly.
as Loki, beautiful and charming and mischievous.
Yeah, but a lot of people tend to see through Loki. People tend to see through Loki, whereas Palpatine, everyone's like, well, he seems to know what he's doing. But yes, of course, he is much more kind of beguiling.
I've never heard Sauron and Palpatine, and that has changed my mind's eye on the potential of that character.
You've never made that.
No, that's a great analogy. Just to, for my 2 cents, there's something about what happened in Eregion in the Second Age, where Celebrimbor and Galadriel was there too, and all of them were this close to Moria, and they were best friends with a dwarven kingdom at the height of its creative powers. Yeah. So to hear in the book, to hear Gimli and Legolas talk to each other outside of the west gate of Moria, and Gimli says, "Sigh, those were happier times. Oh, well, now we have an opportunity to see what it was like when there was not racial strife, but beautiful racial cohesion between the elves and the dwarves, and where Galadriel, I think she is a grand niece of Fëanor himself. I'm fascinated by Galadriel being fascinated.
You only get one. Dwarves. You're doing more than one. The question is, what is one thing you're most looking forward to?
I'm interested in the elves and the dwarves having a wonderful relationship of community building, and I'm interested in that, really.
Kelly, what's your...
True to my background today, at this moment, I am relishing the idea of visiting more places that feel truly inhabitable to me, that are in the realm of nature. So I suppose that would be more of the elves. I know caves are natural, but like, I'd much rather visit Mirkwood or Greenwood, Rivendell. In fact, I want to see Arnor. I just want to see more of Middle Earth in a way where... What was that?
I want to see Anu Minas.
Yes.
The huge tower in Arnor.
And I want to feel like it's a place I can really go visit if I want to, which I feel like the Lord of the Rings films did that. I knew there was so much more than what the camera was pointing at. Even if there wasn't, they tricked me.
Like one thing that I love, they're all things that I love in Lord of the Rings, but like the attention to detail, whenever they've just gone through the Argonath, and you've got tall Brandir there in the middle of the river, you can see you've got Amon Hen on one side, Amon Law is on the other side, and you can see it is up there, like it's those little things. Those little geographical details, particularly in the first film, they kind of lose a little bit. If you think about it, I want you all to picture a map of Middle Earth. The Uruks turn northeast. They're taking the hobbits to Isengard. There is nowhere that they could be, if they're in Rohan, that they're turning northeast, that would indicate that they're going to Isengard. Just putting that out there. Also, the beacon of Amondine. Amondine is a mountain on its own out in between Gondor and Rohan, and yet it's part of the White Mountains. Not sold. Not sold. Get Amon Law right, but they couldn't get Amondine right. Come on, lads.
Well, guys, this has been a wonderful conversation. It's great catching up with you, John. Thank you for enlightening us. Thank you for watching the theatrical editions. I don't think enough people give them a chance, and they are so tight and well edited. I mean, it's the reason we all fell in love with them in the first place. And I'm looking forward
because
to
And the marathon is only 9 hours long.
it. I gained 3 hours of sleep by only doing the theatricals. And look, and guys,
you don't have to change this.
and for all of you just watching at home, again, go to YouTube, search John D. Ruddy, hit that subscribe button, and then when you're done with that, go to Happy Hobbit,
Instagram,
hit
Facebook,
subscribe,
Twitter, TikTok, all of it.
and then also look up KM Rice and Happy Hobbit on YouTube and hit the subscribe button, because everyone's doing wonderful things during quarantine, and I tell you, these two people right here, Kelly and John, have continued to create content that is just positive and enlightening, and there's just so much negativity on the internet and everywhere. It's just nice to have a nice little shining beacon of hope and lightness and just loveliness. So I thank both of you for for making good content.
I agree. I heartily agree.
My sister and I, well, not only have we started filming our Thanksgiving episode of Happy Hobbit, but we're actually doing a live stream on Friday at noon.
Are you going to skin another turkey?
No.
Plug-
You mean field dress?
Field dress a turkey. That's how you call it. That's it.
Wait, is that what you were working on when you first joined the show tonight?
I was making a necklace. I made a snowman necklace.
You were like making something.
I'll show you.
She's put the ring on, folks, and disappeared into the forest. Oh, there it is.
It's probably trying to block it out because of my fake background. But we're doing
cool.
I always participate in holiday craft fairs, and you can't do it this year. And my sister's a genius, and she said, let's do a virtual one. So we're going to be doing a live stream and showing items from my Etsy shop and a Q&A, and hopefully just having a lot of fun.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great.
Isn't it a good idea? She's smart.
Yeah, yes.
I encourage everybody
idea.
to tune in noon Pacific this Friday. Shop local, support your local artists and your favorite people. Amazon's got enough money. They're not going away anytime soon. And please, like, this is, of all years, this is the year to shop local, shop small, get those tiny little craft things from people you like, because everyone needs a little bit of support right now. I'm looking forward to that. I'm so excited. John,
Absolutely.
John, do you merch, or are you just a creator?
I do, yes. I've got loads of Maniman t-shirts. I've got 2 books. Maniman does the history of Ireland and Maniman does revolutionary Ireland. There's loads of different things. I've got a timeline poster of Irish history. Check that out.
What?
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool.
It's right here. I can totally plug this. But yeah, so we've got like the entire history of Ireland in one nice big long timeline. And these are available on johndruddy.com.
That is so cool.
That's so good. Please, I beg of you, consider making some Lord of the Rings Second Age historical materials.
I want to. As long as the Tolkien estate doesn't come after me, that's the major thing. You know, I'm gonna have to really work it in a way that it's not just, you know, like it has to be a kind of an educational, analytical framework. You know,
yes.
Just to make sure that it's that's YouTube and indeed.
I'm sure you're very familiar with the limits of copyright and DMCA and everything like that.
That's why I write history. That's why I do all my own illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
That is literally why, because I'm just like, you can't come after me. I drew it myself.
Oh man,
we should call up Tom Moore and his animation studio, you know, and get him to hire you to come in and do some storyboards.
Pictures, please, so that we can actually do some stuff quicker, because that'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, this is Torn.
I gotta go, gentlemen.
Yes, we're gonna wrap up now. This is Torn Tuesday. We're here every week at 5 p.m. Pacific. Who knows what magic
One
is in the
on
air.
Ireland.
I have a feeling that we're going to have a few more scoops for you next week and in the coming weeks. Things seem to be heating up on Amazon, and I've got more Green Dragon gossip that we can go over next week because no one is traveling for Thanksgiving next week. Nor should you. Please stay home, stay masked, stay safe. Everywhere is spiking in
Wash your
the
hands.
States. Wash your hands. Don't touch your
Indeed.
face. Be smart about it, and we'll all be healthy so we can watch Lord of the Rings together next year. Cliff, thank you for a great show. Kelly, John, and we will see you next week on Torn Tuesday. Thank you for joining
having
us.
me.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you so much for having me. This was great fun.
It's a pleasure to have all these extra voices come in every week. Sometimes we don't know what's happening week by week, and then it just all comes together so beautifully. Thank you to Justin. I want to acknowledge you,
Yeah.
good sir, for helping
Yeah.
plug in the electrical nodules and the jiggery pokery to make it all work. So thank you for that.
And happy
And,
late birthday to Justin.
That stuff's
And-
complicated.
Thank you.
Holy, it's your birthday, Justin. Just a few
Yeah.
days ago, it was your birthday. Happy birthday,
That's right.
late.
It was.
Late wishes to you. Happy birthday,
Nah,
Justin.
Breha, son of a bitch.
I'm 87.
Yeah.
in elf years, that's not long. That's not long, Justin.
All right.
Did you miss that reference, Cliff? Come on.
Oh, sorry, I did.
All right. Cliff needs a drink. We need to go. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank
Until
you.
next time, everyone. Buenos noches y buena suerte.